Hey guys, this is God of Politics. Welcome back to a brand new video, but before we get started with this video, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter, and join the Discord. Those are both linked down in the description. But in today's video, I do want to talk about the polls, and the polls were just absolutely terrible this election, and I knew that the polls would be off. I predicted that the polls would be off. In some cases, I didn't predict that they'd be off this much, but I did predict that they'd be off, and I'm going to be going through each one of these states on the 538 average and just showing you how off some of these pollsters were, and specifically the pollsters, because some polls got it accurate. Polls like Insider Advantage, Susquehanna, even Trafalgar in some cases got it right, but you can just, the polls were just generally not very good this election, and in some cases they were worse than 2016. Now, first looking at the national polls here, we can see that Biden in the 538 average was leading by 8.4 percentage points. Currently, he's only leading by 2.9 percentage points. I would predict that at this point, he probably ends up winning the popular vote by maybe 3.5 to 4 percentage points. We still have ballots to count in New York and California, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Illinois, some of these other states do still have ballots to be counted, but the thing about it is that, he's not going to win it by anything near what 538 showed it at. And you look at some of these individual pollsters, polls like The Economist, YouGov, polls like, you can see here, polls like Change Research, Quinnipiac, USC Dornsife, Survey USA, they were just way, way off. NBC News, Wall Street Journal, Fox News, most of these pollsters just did not get it right at all. And I really can't actually see one that showed Biden +3, I guess really, like, Reuters showed it at Biden +5 with adults, but that's not really a poll you can look at. SurveyMonkey showed it at Biden +5. Rasmussen showed it at Biden +1. IBD, TIPP, actually, they were a good pollster. I did say, if you actually looked at my Twitter, I did say that I expected IBD to be accurate, and they did end up being accurate. I'm pretty sure their last poll had Biden up 3 percentage points, and he's looking like he'll win it by around 3 percentage points. So props to them. They did seem to get it right. But looking at some of these individual states, first we look at a state like Arizona. They had Biden up 2.6 percentage points. He's looking like he'll win it maybe very narrowly, 0.25 percentage points, 0.3 percentage points. So the polls weren't too accurate there. We look at a state like next Florida. This was the big one. They had Biden winning by 2.5 percentage points in Florida. And, you just look at some of these polls. Quinnipiac had Biden +5. Reuters had Biden +4. Morning Consult had Biden +6. The only pollster that really got it right, I guess ABC News, Washington Post, they got it right. I guess Trafalgar got it right. I believe they had Trump +3 if I could find their poll. They had Trump +3, so they were the most accurate pollster in Florida. And then we had polls like PPP showing Biden up 7 points in Florida. And as you can see, you look at the state of Florida, Trump won this state by 3.4 percentage points. So the average in Florida was off 5 percentage points. It was just a terrible average, and I predicted it. Looking at my prediction here, I did predict Trump would win Florida. I didn't predict that he would win it by 3 percentage points. I said it would be very narrow, but I did say that Florida would go to Trump, unlike a lot of people who believe the polls. You have to, believe that there is going to be an inherent mistake in the polls, that they're not accounting for something, and I was right about that. We look at a state like Georgia. They actually, the Georgia polls were pretty decent, I guess. We had some pollsters that got it right. And it's looking like it's going to be a very narrow Biden victory. But again, you do have those pollsters like Mom is showing Biden up by a lot. You have pollsters, like Trafalgar, which show Biden, Trump +5. So you're going to have people on both sides that are going to show weird results. But Georgia, of all the states that did polls, generally more accurate in a state like Georgia. Maine, we had very bad polls in Maine. Maine's 2nd district had Biden up 2.8 percentage points. And like 2016, where the polls were off, Trump's expected to win it by, he's leading right now by 6.6 percentage points. That is an 8-9 point difference almost with the polls. So that's another terrible example of the polls being off. If you look at the 1st district, they had Biden +21. We can see that he actually ended up winning by 23. So it must just be something about polling the 2nd district, which makes sense. It is hard to poll these rural areas. When you have some of these counties that just have, very, very little people, it's very hard to poll these places. And Biden did well in Maine's 2nd district, and I don't even want to get into the Senate race, but the Senate race polls were just absolutely awful. If we look at these Senate race polls, not a single poll had Susan Collins up. Not even her own internal pollsters had her up. We had polls in the end of October that had Gideon up 4 and even 8 percentage points here. These are just terrible pollsters at this point, and I predicted that Sarah Gideon would win, and most people predicted Sarah Gideon would win. Even people on the right who were biased in their predictions to the Republicans, they still predicted Sarah Gideon to win. And I'll admit that I got the state of Maine wrong, but so did most people, and I will trust more on the fundamentals of these states rather than the polls now, and I think that is what I did for the most part. Next, looking at a state like Michigan, and we look at the president for the general election here, we can see the polls were showing Biden winning by almost 8 percentage points. 8 percentage points. It is just another example of all of these terrible polls here, because Biden only ended up winning it by 2.6 percentage points. That is another, 5% polling error in the state of Michigan. We look at some of these pollsters. The only pollster that showed Trump up was Trafalgar. They got the race 6 points off, so they weren't very good either. But you did have some polls, I guess, insider advantage. They actually turned out to be a very accurate pollster. This is, what some people call the Sean Hannity pollster. It is a Republican affiliated pollster, but they did get most of these results accurate. So I do think that they did do quite a good job. Minnesota, Biden did do very well in Minnesota. The polls, a little bit overestimated him, but he's going to end up winning Minnesota by 7.1 percentage points. He did do very well in the suburbs, so that is another thing we have to note there. The next state, Nebraska, the polls did get it actually quite right for the 2nd district, actually underestimating Biden because he's actually going to end up winning it quite easily, but, it's very hard to poll these individual districts. You're going to get those kinds of errors. Nevada, Biden plus 5.3. He's not going to win it by 5.3 percentage points, but he is going to win it. And this is the first example really I've ever seen of Nevada polls underestimating Democrats, because Biden is currently winning by 2.6 percentage points, and that is an underestimation of Trump by, over 3 percentage points, or almost 3 percentage points. New Hampshire, the polls were generally actually, they weren't that accurate. If you look at the RCP average, it was more accurate. I put it as a likely margin. I thought that, since the polls were quite accurate in 2016 and on RCP, they do show it as a likely margin, I'm going to put it as a likely margin. But again, you have the same thing where some of these pollsters just show Biden up by ridiculous margins, and you have to kind of weed out these polls because they are just terrible results. And Biden did do very well in New Hampshire, which beat some people's expectations, but I knew he'd do well in New Hampshire. I didn't really think that the primary mattered, and I was right about that. You have to look at the historical data to see how these states are going to go, and I did that. Not to the extent that I should have, but I did do that. New Mexico, the polls were pretty decent, actually. Same thing in Colorado. I actually didn't look at Colorado, but if we do look at Colorado, the polls were pretty decent in both New Mexico and Colorado. I actually both had them as likely margins. I thought the polls would underestimate Republicans, but they didn't. But next, if you do look at the state of North Carolina, here's another one. They showed Biden winning by 1.8 percentage points, and he ended up losing. He's looking like he's going to lose by around 1.5 percentage points at this point. Most people did really not get it right. I don't know if Insider Advantage did a poll. They did do a poll. They had Trump plus 4, so that does overestimate Trump. But, some polls got this right, I guess. Trafalgar got it right in the state of North Carolina, as they did in 2016 for the most part. But, again, you have another example here of the polls underestimating Donald Trump. Ohio, you see the same thing. This is just one of the worst, as it was in 2016. The polls showed Trump winning by 0.8 percentage points in Ohio. And what did he win by? 8 percentage points. Not 0.8, but 8 percentage points. And we look at the state of Ohio, the pollsters just do not know how to poll Ohio. We had polls like Rasmussen showing Trump up 4, but we had polls like Quinnipiac showing Biden up 4 percentage points. Quinnipiac is just a terrible pollster at this point. Even Trafalgar underestimated Trump in the state of Ohio. That is how bad the polls were. Emerson showed Biden winning 1 in Ohio. Quinnipiac and Emerson are just not good pollsters. These college pollsters are just not good anymore, and they just don't know how to poll these Midwestern states, especially these Midwestern states. Next, Pennsylvania, Biden winning 4.7. He's not going to win by 4.7. You had these terrible pollsters like Monmouth, who is now, not a good pollster in my eyes anymore. You had polls like Maris, you have polls like Rasmussen. They are not going to get these results accurate. Siena College, New York Times showed Biden up 6, Emerson, Biden up 5, ABC News, Washington Post, Biden up 7, Muhlenberg College, Biden plus 5. Nobody got these results accurate. It's looking like he's going to win by around 1 percentage point. Nobody got these results accurate, with the exception of Susquehanna showed Biden up 1, which is within the margin of error, I guess. Trafalgar showed Trump up 2, which is a little bit outside the margin of error. Insider Advantage showed Trump +1. So those pollsters, those Republican-affiliated pollsters actually ended up being right for the most part. And Trafalgar, I'll make a separate video about Trafalgar. Trafalgar is not accurate for the overall, but, comparing it to everybody else, they were. Texas, another thing here, Trump was winning by 1.1 percentage points in Texas, and he's going to end up winning it by just under 6 percentage points. And we look at some of these pollsters, like Data for Progress, showing Biden +1, PPP showing Biden +2, Citizen Data, whoever they are, showing Biden +4. And you see these same things that these pollsters that get put in the average, people listen to these pollsters that are affiliated with the Democrats and think that they're going to be accurate. They were never going to be accurate. And I had Texas at a lean margin. I thought it would go by around 3 percentage points. I was off by 3 percentage points. And again, I will admit that. But, these pollsters just showed it way more off, and it was another one of those few examples where Texas polls actually underestimated the Republican Party. So it was an exception of 2018, and some polls, got it accurate. Gravis actually got it right here. They got lucky there. YouGov got it right. Siena College more or less got it right. But again, Texas polls overall were not good. Virginia polls, they look like they're going to end up being accurate as they were in 2016. And here's the big one, Wisconsin. Biden +8.4. That is just absolutely terrible. Their average never really fell below 5 percentage points going all the way back here to May. Trump was up for a while, but then Biden ended up being up 8.4 percentage points here. And you look at all these polls, some polls are showing double digits. I don't know if we can find the result here, but remember, yeah, here it is. ABC News, Washington Post. On October 28th, they show Biden up 17 points in the state of Wisconsin. What did he end up winning it by? He ended up winning it by 0.5 percentage points here. The polls were just absolutely terrible in Wisconsin, as they were in 2016. Now, I showed it at a lean margin. I thought Trump would win it, or Trump would lose it to Joe Biden by around 2 to 3 percentage points, and I got it off by 2 percentage points approximately, but I did show that Biden was winning. Some people thought that the polls would be way more off than they were. They showed Trump winning the state of Wisconsin. I thought they were wrong. There were people that showed Biden winning Wisconsin by a likely margin. I also thought they were wrong, and I seem to have gotten it right in the middle there, and I seem to have gotten it pretty, more or less accurate. Siena College shows Biden up 11 on November 1st. You have Morning Consult, Biden +13. SurveyMonkey, Biden +12. Research & Co, Biden +8. Change Research, Biden +8. These terrible polls here that all just, even Trafalgar had it as a tie, and they got in it more or less accurate in the state of Wisconsin. But again, these polls are just all absolutely terrible, and you just cannot trust these polls, especially in the Midwest. I used to think, you could trust polls in the areas like Arizona, which, on the RCP average, they were right. You could trust polls in states like Georgia and Texas and New Mexico and Colorado and Nevada, and to an extent Florida. But now even that reputation is ruined because the polls overestimated Trump in Arizona and Florida and Texas and even Nevada. And just again, you have those terrible pollsters in the Rust Belt that just do not know how to do polls. Even when they weighted by education, they said, we're weighting by education, now the polls are going to be accurate. Well, the polls were even more off than 2016, so what do you even have to say about that? But the polls, generally, I actually used to use the polls more than I did right before the election. I just realized, these polls are just showing completely unrealistic results with independents, with white working class voters that are never going to break for Biden and are never going to vote in these numbers. And, you do see that, these results are just, way off. You had this poll with 71,000 people that got the result off 7 points. Like, what do you even do at that point? What is the point of polling at that point? And I don't even want to get into this House polling. I might even make another video about that. But Democrats, these Republican internal polls in the House underestimated Republicans. And that is, just an unheard of thing to see. And, the polls are very, very terrible. I will not use the polls very, very much anymore. Not a single one for a House race. For the Senate, you had terrible results as well. You can look at a state like North Carolina. In the Senate, they showed, not a single poll showed Tom Tillis up with the exception of, these Republican internal polls, and ended up getting it right. So, in the future, when you're looking at predictions, you're going to have to do a lot more predictions based on the fundamentals of these states. Trends, fundraising, which was not even that accurate this election, but it's mainly just on trends and how these states are going, the nature of these states, where will Trump improve or where will Democrats improve, where will Republicans improve. And, polling is not a tool that anybody should really be using anymore, and I did not use it to the extent that many people did. I used it too much compared to some other people, and my prediction is all accurate except for one state. But again, the polls are very terrible, and nobody should really be using them anymore. So, thank you all for watching this video. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, join the Discord that is linked down in the description, and check out the website, which is also linked down in the description. But again, guys, thank you all for watching this video, and I will see you guys later.